Chapter 9 Sticky Notes. Chapter 9 is about soil and agriculture. The case study is about no-till agriculture. I find that my students first of all need to understand what tilling the soil is before they can understand what no-till is. So tilling the soil is basically plowing the soil, which is turning it over to prepare for seeds. And it's done by tractors now. It used to be done sometimes by hand or usually with horses or some sort of animals, and you'd have a plower that you would hold behind you. Now it again is done by tractors. So when you make the soil nice and loose to plant seeds in, it also leaves it vulnerable to wind and water erosion. And that's a big problem because we lose a lot of topsoil every year in the Midwest in our agricultural productive area. So no-till lives behind crop residue to cover the soil and prevent erosion. On this page, going to page 216, you need to know the definition of rangeland, cropland, soil. Soil is not dirt, it's more than dirt. Soil contains dirt and living things like bacteria and fungi, etc. Know the definition of sustainable agriculture. You also need to know that we have no more arable land left in the world to really turn into farms. Either the soil is bad, or there isn't a water supply, or the soil is salinized. Something's happened and we can't farm that land. Know this picture and caption about the nutrients needed for healthy soil, N, P, and K. On the next page, 217, 10,000 years ago, humans switched from being hunter-gatherers to agriculture. So when you're a hunter-gatherer, you have to carry your children from place to place, and so you have to space them apart. But when you live in a house or a shack or a hut back in the early days, and you farm the land, you can have a lot of children, which in turn have a lot of children, which in turn have a lot of children. And so this is a positive feedback loop for exponential population growth. Going to page 218, know the definition of traditional agriculture, subsistence, industrial agriculture, and the definition of monoculture and polyculture. We're going to add a type of agriculture as well. So again, your book talks about 3, but we're going to add plantation agriculture, where large corporations from wealthy countries, including ours, but others as well, have big farms in developing countries for cash crops such as coffee, tea, bananas. Many of them have human rights violations and unfair labor practices. So this is going on for a couple of hundred years. The British used to have tea plantations in India. The United States corporations have coffee plantations in Central and South America and even Africa. Bananas, all of that. On the next page, 219, up here, know this picture and the different types of weathering, physical, chemical, and biological. Know the definition of leaching and soil profile. And we have our soil profile here. So on the soil profile, memorize the O, A, B, and C horizons. You do not need to know E and R. But not just in order, you need to know what they are and what they are made out of. So A is topsoil, O is organic layer, which is your leaf litter and twigs and dead things. It's not technically soil. Your soil actually starts with A. Humus is talked about briefly in your book, but we're going to add some information to humus. Humus is mature compost, and it's really important for healthy soil. It solves a lot of soil problems. First, it's a buffer for proper pH, so with the addition of acids to the soil, it will prevent a change in pH. Let me just change my page here to get it out of the way. It promotes microorganisms that maintain healthy soil. You want all those good microorganisms, from bugs to fungus to bacteria. And it prevents nutrients from leaching out of the soil through water runoff. So humus is very important. It also helps prevent evaporation of water, which we'll talk about later. The next page on 220, we're going to talk about some physical soil tests. So your book doesn't really classify physical soil tests, but the AP test expects you to know some. So soil sieves is a tool that separates soil into particle size, clay, silt, and sand. And then what you do with these sieves is you use this soil triangle to identify what kind of soil you have. Do you have loam, silt, silty clay, etc.? The next physical soil test is porosity, which is the amount of water a soil can hold, which is basically its pore size. Clay and sand have the least amount. Actually, sand has the least of all. Silt and loam have the most porosity. So sand is number one here that has the least. And then down here you need to know the particle sizes. So clay is the smallest particle size, then silt, then sand. And you also need to know what loam is. Loam is an equal mix of all three, and it's the best soil that there is. Another physical soil test is permeability, which we can also call drainage rate. And if you have too much permeability, if the water goes through too quickly, then your roots don't get enough water. But if it doesn't drain very quickly, your soil becomes waterlogged and you can have root rot. So the roots will rot off of the plant, and that's not what you want. You also need to know the definition of plowpan, which is a hard layer in soil that resists water. And so if you water it too much and it gets stuck here at the plowpan, it can cause root rot as well. On this page, know what swidden agriculture is. So basically it's slash and burn agriculture, and it's usually in the rainforest, and the soil is so poor in the rainforest, and these people are just trying to clear some forest so they can just grow crops and eat. And it can only work really for a few years, but the soil is so poor that they have to move on and do it again. So that is called swidden agriculture. We'll continue on with Chapter 9 on page 222 in the next video. 222 starts over here.